Hello interweb, this is Dannage. Yes, it's the end of 2016. Yes, I may actually try and do some work. It's amazing. I'm going to try a bit of a sort of a Let's Play series version. And I'm going to give this game a go. It's called Starmade. As you can tell by my surroundings, it is block, sort of voxel based, and very much a little bit like Minecraft, with the exception of the fact that it is in fact in deep space, as opposed to on planets. Now they do have planets in this game, but my frame rate goes down to the point where, let's be honest, it would be quicker for me to actually just put in screenshots, or just one screenshot, and then that will actually be more effective. Anyway, what are we doing in this series? In this series, we are going to test out the new factions stuff. Well, we're not going to test it out so much. We're going to build some stuff that contributes to factions. But what this is more than anything else, and one of the reasons why it's called Dannage Ruins as opposed to Dannage Plays, is because this is more for noobs. And a lot of noobs will be out there and they're watching these guides and they're doing the stuff. And to be honest, there's plenty of tutorials in this game. The game itself has 12 tutorials which take you through all of the cool stuff. And there's lots of videos out there. That's not really what you're here for, because there's other people on YouTube that do a better job of that. What I'll be doing is I'll be making noobs feel better about themselves, because, well, I certainly look at a lot of ship reviews, and I see a lot of people that are very experienced gamers and very good gamers and very good ship designers looking at what I consider to be amazing ships and then going, yeah, well, could do better. It's not really that great, is it? And there's a lot of people out there that are looking at that and going, oh, really? That is not good to you? That is not that is could do with some work? Oh my god. And I think that may take some of the player community away, and they may go, well, how am I ever going to fit in? So here's me, and I'm going to build utter tosh. But it's very important that people realise that you can build utter tosh, and it still doesn't necessarily have to be utterly terrible. So if you're an experienced, superior gamer at Starmade and you're expecting to learn something here, good God, man, go away. Because you won't. This is for people that just go, why has Dannage spent so many hours on this damn thing? Anyway, right, so survival mode, creative mode, that sort of stuff, same as Minecraft. There's a lot of stuff in here like Minecraft. This obviously looks very much sort of squares and triangles, and there are a lot of voxel sandbox games out there now which look a lot prettier. But what I will say is that Starmade does have a fair amount of depth. It's got a lot more playability than some of those other games, and factions is one of the elements that they've made, because they're still in alpha. They've been in alpha, frankly, for 7,000 years, but they are at least consistently and constantly doing some stuff. And factions is the latest update. I've just taken myself completely out of the galaxy here. This is a galactic map, and what factions is basically, even in single player mode, you get other people playing. That's because every server ends up, or many servers end up either being completely deserted, or massively over allocated. Right, so what we'll do, we'll stand up, we'll go, ooh, look at me. That's why I sat down before. It was so that you could see my brilliantly modelled face. Well, it's as close to an H face as I was willing to get, and I didn't really spend a lot of time on the texture, I'll be honest. So, anyway, yes. So, this series is going to be largely about in survival mode, and we're going to build a fleet for some factions, and we're going to show all the noobs out there that you don't have to actually build amazing ships, especially on day one. You know, your starter ships shouldn't look that amazing. Just make them as pretty as you can, but if they're not those Titan killers, it doesn't matter, because those Titan killers were probably built in creative mode and took a long time to build. And they all started somewhere. Their first ships were all probably Doom Cubes. But the first episode, I'm going to take you through some of the basic systems for building a ship, just so that we understand what some of the most rudimentary functions are. And then, from episode 2 onwards, we'll go into survival mode, and I will start you off, and we'll build a fleet, and we'll build a base, and it'll be really exciting, and then pirates will come along and kill everything, and then I'll start again, and then that will encourage you as newbies to say, well, at least there are people out there that are worse than me. Okay, so without further ado, let's go adventure. So here we are, deep space. Right, deep space. Let's hope no pirates come. They do tend to. What we do is we start off with creating a new ship. Now there is a button to press with that. I've got that set to X. Your keyboard mappings may be different. I'm not going to talk about keyboard mappings. I've customized mine a little bit. Okay, so you can name a ship, and then your most fundamental block is the ship core. This is the one that overheats. This is the one that you need to protect. However, you also need to be able to walk into it, so you can't completely surround it with armor. What you want is you need to be able to access it. Also, you may consider transporters or other means of traveling fast if you build a huge ship around it with many corridors between the access to the ship and the core, because you will have to make that walk, my son. You will have to make that walk. Anyway, so you've got a flat mode, you've got a build mode, tutorials, go read or watch. Okay, so some of the blocks, power blocks, most important blocks here, and also have a funky placement. So one block, if you look at the top left hand corner, there's a text box here, which gives you information about your spaceship. It has some power, which is slowly crawling up at 1 E per second, and a battery life of 50,000. That is way not enough. That is not even enough for a fighter. So what you need is more batteries, and these power capacitors are the batteries. And you notice I placed a block and I got 51,000 now. I place a second block, I now have 52. On their own, they're worth 1,000 each. If you connect them together, 52,070. So actually, these ones are quite efficient, or more efficient, if you place them in bigger and bigger blocks or cubes. Alright? So that's batteries. The next one is auxiliary power. Now that's just added another line. Now these work in exactly the same way. I've never actually used one, but they work in the same way, as that they're a bit more efficient if you plug them together. What might distract you from doing that, though, is these tend to these give you a boost in urgent times, like auxiliary power. That's why they're there. But they also tend to, let's say, blow up. And when they blow up, they take some other stuff with them. Power reactors. These are the most important because they generate the power, they recharge your ship. And what these do is they work in a slightly different way. There's tutorials that will tell you, but essentially they get more efficient in a broader, or the ones within an area are not as efficient. Well, I've explained that really badly, haven't I? Okay, so I've currently got a 3 by 3 by 3 area here, and what will happen is if I add something within that 3 by 3 area that's in the same block, that won't give me as much juice as it would have done had I had released something completely separate. So in a 3x3 grid, many people will say that this is actually the most efficient way, because you've got two reactor systems now using that 9 or the 3x3x3 to the 27. I learned to count, doofus. That 27 block grid is being used by twice for the reactors. And you'll notice if I now hook these up, look over there on the left, 1849 E per second. If I hook them up, it's 1124. So it's actually far more efficient to do these things like that. And you will see there are people out there that do all sorts of weird patterns for 5x5 reactors and 7x7 reactors. A lot of people use this super sexy advanced build mode to just build huge things like that. Yeah, take that out, and take that, and then they put that. And you know all those big ships that you see, some of these reviews, they've all got reactors like that somewhere. And then a lot of people, what they do, it's a bit like this, but they may chain them so that's connected, so that's not good. But now in that space I've got another one that's not actually connected because it's only by diagonals. So that was the undo button is also something wonderful for doofuses like me. So what you'll do is you just take these and you get people making a lot of reactors like that. So let's go for en masse deletion. These numbers, these sliders, by the way, you can set in the server configuration. So if you're on somebody else's server, tough, but you have to respect the server admin and what they say, because it's for your own good. But what you will see is that if you're in single player mode, you can just do these yourself, set those yourself. I've set them to 140. To be honest, I don't tend to build that much bigger than 140. I think my biggest ships, well, yeah, who knows. Anyway, so next one is cargo. Now cargo's changed a little bit in the last sort of 18 months. I lose track of time. But now you have not just storage lockers, which have, as you'll note, 100 mass of inventory, but you can also use them as cargo. And now the cargo thing, you basically use your control button, which will default to a C, and then if you hook up these cargo blocks, they unfortunately go all red when they're connected to a cargo thing. It's a little bit disappointing because some people use these as decorative blocks, because if it's just a cargo block like that, you can see, oh, that looks quite pretty. Yeah, and they've got a few different textures. Textures, incidentally, about to get a bit of an overhaul. Some new textures coming out in the next release, I believe. So you may find that some of these pictures are quite different in our survival mode one. But what we'll do, if you place a cargo block there and you connect it to stuff, I've just connected it to 2, and now it's 300 as opposed to 100. So essentially, and then the cool thing about these silly red blocks, and you thinking, why are they red? That is because they are empty. If I fill that cargo with stuff, I will get 4 different size blocks come in. So it will start off as a slab which is a 1/4 thickness, and all they've done is they've basically taken the edges of the texture and put them in, and then a 1/2 thickness, a 3/4 thickness, and then a full block. So it's quite clever, and it also gives you some idea of how you are doing for cargo space. Thrusters are next. They used to have an annoying little red ring around them. Now what they do is if you move, they have thruster plume, which dies after a couple of seconds, but you then take some sexy screenshots. You can also connect your thruster to a light, and then you can change the color of your thruster plume It's like they think of everything. Cameras are very important, and I will explain to you why cameras are important. Let's put this block here. Now, what Starmade tends to do is, if you're in build mode and you get inside a solid block, then you can't see up. What you can do is you can see where the next exposed edge is. So if I go back inside that block, you can see there's a gap, and it looks a little bit daft, but at least that's good for going around inside spaceships and finding little holes that you've left. But what will also happen is that when you're in flight mode, you basically look out of your ship core, and oh look, I've got a thruster. Now that's great, I can obviously see the plumage, but there. And also doesn't lend itself to keep your core protected. So what you do is you have a camera, you don't need to do anything sexy with the linking, you just then change an arrow and it actually moves to where the camera is. Thrusters, the other major important thing about thrusters, I don't know why I didn't mention it, you will see on the 4th line down, I've got a thrust which is 8.6 at the moment, or 6.0 now, the power usage, etc., and a speed. That's a maximum speed, and what that will do is that will actually change the speed depending on your mass. Will depend on how many thrusters you need. They do a little bit of maths in here, and you basically say, alright, so if I've got a massive ship with loads of armor and loads of guns on it, I need a lot of thrusters, otherwise my maximum speed will be 3, which can lend itself to quite well to small fighters pinging around while massive titans are sitting there going, nope, I'll put all my stuff into shields. Okay, good segue. Shields, no specific rules about placement of blocks. There's no sexiness here. What we do have there is you've got shields at the bottom of the top paragraph on the left hand side, and I've got 855 now, or 959. I'm not sure exactly what number. They're something odd, like 74 or something. I don't know why they brought that up. But so you get 220 to start off with. One block gives you another 110. One block doesn't, or the next block doesn't. So it should be on 440, but actually, is there any difference? No, there's 436, 436. Yes, so it's just the number of shield blocks. Now, shields, most important thing in the game, many people will argue, because you need them to stop people from shooting your stuff. And your stuff will get shot. Regardless of what armor you've got on, it will get shot through. So shields, very important. Shield is actually a two-part party. So you've got your actual capacitor, which is generating all of your shield power, and you've got then your recharger. I've put 11. I'll put 2 recharges in. I'm getting 11 shield points per second. You see that the little thing, the bar, when I'm on my flight mode, on the left-hand side, my shields are going up, and they're going up relatively, so that's what, 3% every couple of seconds. That's because I've got 2 shield blocks. But I would say, if you're in normal single player and you've just got isanths, the standard pirates running around, you probably want something like 100,000 shields, 200,000 shields. But we'll go into that when we go into survival, because that's probably completely wrong. And also, now that there's factions, I don't know if those factions are horribly more advanced. But we'll see. I've had some players complain that the faction ships are too weak already. But what are they expecting? This is a game that's got to be accessible by people that are only just starting out. Right, faction blocks. We mentioned factions. You can create your own faction with a. If you don't remember what the key mapping is, you press one of the keys, and then it'll get you there. And then what you can do is you can create a faction. There are already now 5 factions in the basic game. Outcasts, Scavengers, and Traders is the 3 that they've introduced that we saw on the map before. Trading Guild and Pirates. I say we saw on the map, that was in a different version of the recording. Here's the map. Here's the... I've taken myself outside of the thing. There's a faction, there's a faction, there's a faction. something they've just recently released. I don't know even if it was on a previous recording or not. I've had a lot of sound trouble, so I've had a lot of re-recording. Anyway, faction block. You stick that faction block in. You need to be in a faction to be able to use it, but then you can basically change the name of anything, and you can also set permissions. So you can build space stations, and you can then say that the public can access certain parts, or members of your faction can access certain parts, and not others. Last major one is Hulle. Now Hulle, you basically is your wooden planks from Minecraft. Or your cobblestone. This will form the basis of absolutely everything you end up doing. So Hull, although obviously we're saying that Hull's more decorative than, well, not more decorative, but yeah, shields are more important. And then what you've got some normal blocks. You've got some wedges, which are quite cool. For the normal blocks, you can let's just change the orientation. You can change the stacking. This again relatively recent, but you can have quad blocks, half blocks, 3/4 blocks, and full blocks. Other things that you've got corners. They're quite useful, and then you've got your friend of mine, the tetra. And then the hepta connects to the tetra, and then that's how you make nice beveled edges to things. Very, very sexy, and basically makes stuff nice and gives you some smoother lines, and it stops your spaceships all from being complete squares. So that is basically the stuff. I'm going to now just sort of end this. You can't delete or move a core, but future updates promise that you will have movable cores, and you will also have command chairs from which you'll be able to duck into. Once your core is the last block, then you can delete it, and then you're walking around. But then if you find that the other thing that you've built is absolutely miles away, you walk very slowly. So I'm going to do that, and then we'll abandon that, and then we'll start the game in Chapter 2 for sexy survival time. Okay, cheers interweb, bye bye.